Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I am the Tennis Lycans. How's everybody doing today? So, I was on X, Twitter, browsing around, and I came across a post that I've seen quite a few times on other things and people talk about and everything. It has to do with Pokemon and everything. And I figured I need to put out there my 2 cents worth on it and kind of go over my reasoning for it. And that is, of the Pokemon games, the battle gimmicks that we have the battle gimmicks that we have had over the years, which ones are the best? Now, by far, the best one has been and always will be Mega Evolution. Mega Evolution is absolutely amazing. It really amplifies a lot of Pokemon that needed it and some that didn't really need it. But it's really cool mechanic and everything, and it's probably the best one we've ever had throughout the entire game series. And I love it that they brought it back in ZA. It's the only one that's ever come back. Second, number 2 on the list, I'm going to go with Gigantamax, because Gigantamax within the story is actually just as necessary as Mega Evolution throughout the story. You have to use Gigantamax. There's no getting around it. You're going to be at a disadvantage if you don't use it throughout the entire game. And I'm talking PvE stuff, you versus the game, okay? Not player versus player, okay? Because that gets into a whole another level of stuff, and we're not going to talk about that. But, yeah, Gigantamax was actually useful, and there's some really cool alternate forms that some of them get. So, yeah, Gigantamax is my number 2. For number 3... and this is where it's going to start getting kind of controversial, and you're going to find out why when I talk about my bottom pick. But number 3 is actually Z Crystals. Z Crystals, while not the best, and they're kind of lame compared to Gigantamax and Mega Evolution, they did have a usefulness to them where, okay, I need a big source of damage, let me use my Z move. And it was something that was really, you didn't have to have it throughout the game, but when you used it, it meant something. And now we're going to get into the bottom one, and people are going to be like, wait, you don't like terrestrialization? No, I can't stand terrestrialization. Terrestrialization is the worst of all the mechanics that we've gotten. And my reasoning for it is a couple things. First and foremost, throughout the entire game, you have no reason to use it. There's literally not a reason to use it. You can play the entire game without ever using terrestrialization. Yeah, you can do that the same with Z Crystals, but the Z Crystals, at least, it was a meaningful thing that you did with it. Terrestrialization, there's no point in ever using it. You don't have to. In fact, the only reason I ever used it throughout the entire game was in the DLC at the Blueberry League, because in order to unlock all of the starter Pokemon, that's one of the things you have to do, is terrestrialize in battle. There's no reason for it other than that, just to finish the Blueberry quest for missions and everything. If it weren't for that, you do not have to terrestrialize throughout the entire game. As a side note to that, the actual use of terrestrialization by the developers is the dumbest thing ever. And here's what they did with it, okay? We can use any one of the possible trainers throughout the game that you have to face. Any of the gym leaders, any of the bullies. They all specialize in something. And I'm just going to pick a type. I don't have any of their sets memorized, because that game is just horrible all the way around. But let's just go with the idea that it's a poison trainer. They're going into their ace, and their ace is terrestrialization. They're a poison trainer. What does the games do? What did the developers do? They're a poison trainer. They use something like a psychic, which is really strong against poison, and change it into a poison type, which is weak against psychic. And most likely you're fighting this poison trainer with a psychic. So you just turned something that was a disadvantage, or something that you're going to have problems with, and had the NPC enemy turn it into something that's like, oh, here you go, here's an easy target. Not only that, but it only changes their type. So suddenly they become weak to whatever it is the whole rest of their team is weak against. But they don't gain any kind of move advantage because they're still the original Pokemon with the type moves that they have. So even if I have something super amazing, I'm still just using the types of moves that Pokemon can use. I'm not using something that is now a type of, which would be an advantage. Like a poison type having a poison attack. Instead, I'm a psychic type that's now a poison type and I'm using psychic moves. It is the dumbest thing ever to just change the type of the Pokemon. They didn't do it in a meaningful way either. They didn't say, oh, I'm a poison type and you're most likely going to be using a psychic type, so let me terrestrialize into a dark type. They didn't do it in a way that would make sense. They did it in a way that keeps their team type intact and change something that would have been useful against you, the player, because you're probably locked into using a certain type against them. And it just doesn't make any sense, even the way they used it in the game. And again, you don't need to use it. Throughout the entire game, there's no flat out reason for you to actually use terrestrialization. 90% of the time, your enemy is going to terrestrialize into their main type, and you've probably still got your strong versus their type, like using a psychic against poison, using a fighting against dark. You're still probably using your fighting type against their darks, and then they're going to terrestrialize into a dark type. What's the point? Like, the whole gimmick of terrestrialization is just absolutely horrible. It is the dumbest mechanic we've ever had, and I don't understand why people rank it as like number 2 or 3. It is terrible. At least with the Z crystals, you had a reason to use it, because it meant something to use it. Terrestrialization doesn't mean shit. Sorry for dropping a curse, but it's terrible. Like, again, the only reason I even used it throughout my entire playthrough of Violet is because I was forced to by the quest for the blueberry points. That's it. Other than that, there's no reason to do it. Like, literally, it is a gimmick that has no value. And that's my 2 cents, and I'm going to die on this hill. Thanks for watching.